Okay. Okay. So metaphysical inquiry has to be subjected. I think this was the last theme that we were talking about before, has to be subjected and guided by the critical testing of your personal thinking, personal intelligence, according to the evidence available to you. This, from the very beginning, therefore, focuses on metaphysics as not being apart from, and therefore not totally transcendent, as if it didn't have anything to do at all with the reality we experience. However, since it's the one and the many that we are talking about here, always at the back of your mind should be a way to systematically articulate this experience. You will see that in my comments, if ever, okay, on your exams. When I start saying any evidence or how do you know this, and so forth and so on, that will be my attempt to keep you honest. In other words, that will be my attempt to make sure that you understand and therefore are able to articulate properly what you understand in metaphysics, especially metaphysics. Madalas kasi kung minsan, kagaya nung nagtuturo pa ako ng filosofiya ng tao, okay, at pinag-uusapan namin ang pagmamahal, halimbawa, kung paano ang tao ay tao dahil siya ay nagmamahal, hindi lamang sa sarili, kundi sa kapwa, hindi lamang sa kapwa, kundi lahat-lahat ng tao. Maraming mga parang tinatawag nating mga poets, bigla na lang sila magsalita na parang puro tula. Mabuti sana kung naiintindihan ko. Pero ang hirap nun, kung minsan, parang hindi ko yata maintindihan ko anong pinagsasabi. But they wax poetry as if I am supposed to understand what they mean, or I am supposed to understand that that is what metaphysics is all about. So no. In other words, I'm sure that this early in your study of metaphysics, okay, I'm sure that you cannot write the way Gerard Manley Hopkins would write. I don't know if you know that poet, okay, but I consider him a poet who writes metaphysically. But you know he is, because he understands metaphysics. So before we can go into that kind of talking about what it is that we experience metaphysically, we should first and foremost be able to articulate rationally. Okay? And if it has to be step by step by difficult step, so be it. We have to train ourselves to be able to talk about something as abstract as being, so that people can understand. Okay. I suppose when somebody who doesn't study philosophy at all asks you what metaphysics is all about, and you can make that person understand, then come back to me and tell me, Father, I have just explained what metaphysics is all about to somebody who doesn't even study. That would be a perfect example of somebody who has been able to systematically articulate what metaphysics is all about. Or metaphysical inquiry. So that in the end, what will distinguish you as a metaphysician, this is within philosophical inquiry because there are various disciplines of philosophy, would be the thrust of your inquiry toward articulating a vision of reality as a whole. Another favorite phrase that you have to remember all the time. So now you have the problem of one and many. Second would be metaphysics as articulating a vision of reality as a whole. The image that I always use for this is, you know, if you're fond of going up a mountain, for example, or even climbing a tree like Norris Clark did in his younger days, okay? And the reason, and as you survey what you leave behind on the ground, up close, you can't see a lot. You can't see much. But the farther you go, the higher you go up, okay? The bigger your vision. And maybe if you are focused enough, you can even see connections. Like every time I go to Baguio, I'm from the Ilocos, so I take the Naguilian Road route. And there, when I look down from the mountain as we near Baguio, I can see how Lingayen Gulf connects with the sea. I don't know what sea that is, but it's there. Maybe that's the West Philippine Sea, I don't know. But it is connected, something that I would never imagine or see or experience if I were up close that place. That is what I think we metaphysicians are trying to do with reality. Reality is so much larger than we ever will be. And so, as we will see later, it seems impossible to articulate being because that is practically everything, okay? But because we have this capacity for seeing reality as a whole, then it is not impossible to do metaphysics. Okay? So this is all that we can say for now about what metaphysics is all about. It focuses on what metaphysical inquiry is all about. So, what goes on in metaphysical inquiry? Let us ask further. We focus usually explicitly on the ultimate context of all experience. Big words, that of reality or being itself, rather than on any particular part of it. Did I talk to you about whenever we talk about a particular thing, although that seems to be what we are about, we are, however, also, even if it's not explicit, referring to being itself, the horizon against which the particular appears, as it were, and without which the particular cannot even be seen, okay, or discerned. Have I talked about that before? Like a ship that's sailing on the sea, for instance. Can you ever identify that there's something like a ship sailing without the horizon? But what is that horizon? Where is that horizon? The closer you get, it still goes farther away. I think that's what we that's how we are able to look at particulars actually. If there's no background, it's quite difficult to note whether or not that thing exists at all. So when we talk about being or reality itself as the ultimate context of all experience, that is how we understand it. It is that against which anything that exists exists. That against which anything that exists becomes intelligible to me. So much so, okay, that what we do when we inquire metaphysically is to discover the universal properties and structures of all beings, their ultimate principles of intelligibility. There's the other phrase that I want you to remember from now until the end of your lives. Okay? Principles of intelligibility. Okay? So it's not just a question of, I don't know how I'm, let me put it this way. When we inquire metaphysically, we do look at a particular thing. Okay? But when you look at the particular thing, it is always against the context of the whole of reality, which is being itself, like I said. So even when we are focused on the particular, we are already implicitly articulating being as the context of that particular. But that's still too vague. What is that being? So we have to ask, okay, so there's this multiplicity that I experience. Now, metaphysical inquiry would like to ask, what are the universal structures or properties of all beings that are real? Which amounts to the same, the principles of intelligibility of all of reality. Not just this chair, not just this table, but through them, all of reality. Gets? In fact, that is all, that is what we will painstakingly try to achieve by way of this course. To understand the principles of intelligibility of all beings. That's why we will eventually we will start talking about essence as principles of intelligibility, matter form, okay, accident, substance. These are metaphysical terms that used to mean something abstract until we see it as part of our understanding of reality itself. And then we will talk about change. Okay, how does one thing remain the same while it is supposed to have changed? Or how does one thing change into something totally new? And then we'll have to talk again about the principles of intelligibility. And so we talk about essence, esse, matter, form. Okay, so be patient. I know you would like to understand everything at this point, but no, we will have to do it slowly because that's the only way we can understand what these principles are about. So if I may summarize what I would like us to note by way of metaphysical inquiry at this point, one would be that it is about articulating a vision of the whole being reality. And if you're trying, and if you understand what that whole that we are talking about is all about, that is being itself. being as parang bringing together the multiplicity of my experience. But how do I understand that being? And so metaphysical inquiry will have to go for, okay, the basic principles of intelligibility. Are there questions at this point? Do you follow the process that we are supposed to go through? Any questions? There's
I guess my only question is what is the difference between having being that is intelligible and knowing being?
oh, as we will discover later. Do you go by Owell or Pierce? Either.
Pete, sir, Pete, Pete.
Pete.
Pa.
I must Pete.
Yeah, Pete, just P-E-T-E, sir, as in Peter.
Okay, good. Remind me all the time.
Yes, sir.
Now I forgot your question.
What's the difference between ano, sir?
Knowing and being as intelligible.
Yeah.
The difference, there is a difference in perspective. When we're talking about knowing, we're talking about the person knowing from my perspective. Okay? And from my perspective, we are talking therefore about my capacity to know being. But come to think of it, how could I have such a capacity and then not know being at all? Right? So, given my passion for knowing, which knowing is a passion, given this passion, similar to love, for example, it would be useless unless it does or it's capable of knowing being. That's intelligible. That's the intelligibility of being. So the two, while they seem to be coming from two sides of the same process. Okay, in phenomenology, you have the subjective and the objective. Okay, you have the subject-object distinction, but these two can never be, these two may be distinguished, but are inseparable as a matter of fact. So my capacity to know is from my perspective, my capacity, which is not understandable as a capacity, as a passion, unless being is intelligible. So much so that one conclusion we will have to make by the end of this discussion of the principle of intelligibility is that knowing is for knowing being, and being is for knowing. Okay? I declare that I can know because being is intelligible, but being is intelligible for the mind. And that's actually the topic that we are supposed to try to talk about after this. So if you want to go there now, so be it. Let's talk about the principle of intelligibility. Pete, did you get what I was trying to explain?
Yes, sir. Very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. To understand being, therefore, is to understand the ultimate principles of intelligibility. So the focus of our discussion now should be, what are the principles of intelligibility? Or how are we to understand the principle of intelligibility? Okay. I think one of the things that somebody who doesn't like metaphysics, and if you have had Father David as your teacher, you will understand that he doesn't think metaphysics is relevant at all. And when I meet him in the corridors of the Jesuit residence, and like an old-aged person keeps asking me, "What do you teach?" And I say, "Louis, you've been asking me this question for 10 years. I teach metaphysics." "Oh, is there such a thing still?" And I say, "You can attend my class if you don't think that there is such a thing." But anyway, what Father David, I think, is being, let's say, influenced by would be the objection that realists especially raise against metaphysics. Is it even possible? Because look, what is the subject matter of metaphysics? What's the subject matter of metaphysics? Sunta.
So the whole of being.
Being. Okay, good. So is there such a thing as being? There is a chair, yes. There's a table, yes. There's let's say a tree outside, yes. But being? Okay. So the question, is this metaphysics possible at all? Why is it being objected against? Because there seems to be no distinctive subject. Okay. If you were studying science, there would be one distinctive subject: biology, animals, zoology, animals, biology, life, and so forth and so on. Even philosophy of the human person focuses on the human person. But metaphysics is supposed to talk about being. That is not a distinctive subject because, as the objection says, it's impossible to study all beings at once. If this is impossible, then how do we make sense of the one and the many that we were talking about? If this is impossible, then how do we make sense of, bringing up being whenever we articulate a particular thing? Because those two are not apart from each other. Like Heidegger says, the difference is ontological rather than ontic. So how can you even talk about this difference if you cannot have a distinctive subject as being? Well, the response is really to point towards our capacity to know. Our capacity to know is such that it is not a slave to just simply particulars. So that if there's a chair over there, my knowing is limited to that chair. Even when I try to know what a chair is, okay, I can try to know it from a distinctive point of view. For instance, what does it have in common with a table? I'd like to know. Okay, we sometimes ask that. Or this chair that I am sitting on is not very comfortable. How can I say it's not comfortable when I'm just limited to this particular? But maybe I'm not limited to just this particular. I happen to sit on another chair. So, and that I would say is comfortable compared to the one I'm sitting on now. Again, what's happening here is I'm not just limited to this chair. I am actually bringing together all the chairs I have sat on, but from the perspective of what? Knowing that it is comfortable or not comfortable. Do you get that? even when you talk about colors, for example, why do I like the color blue? Okay, maybe, I don't know, but I used to like green until I became an Athenian. Okay, and then all of a sudden green has become something I disdain. And so on. So, but I am not capable of making even that point unless, I am able to compare the two. But to be able to compare the two colors, I must have a particular or distinctive point of view. Blue is relaxing. Blue is smart. Blue is intelligent. Blue is eagle. I can go on and on and on. Okay? So in other words, metaphysics is capable as a science of having a distinctive point of view and so capable of knowing being. Because being happens to be that which, that which makes things exist in the first place. Are you following me? Metaphysics considers only the most general, all-embracing laws of all things precisely as real or as existing. In other words, it asks the question, everything that exists, what allows them to exist? Okay? We will talk about how we are capable of doing that by a separation of judgment. Aquinas calls it. We sometimes call it abstraction. I leave something behind. I take out something from what is there. But that's not the form of, that's not the way we do metaphysics. It's more like a separation of judgment because, and here you'll have to wait until we start talking about that. You cannot take out existence from anything. Okay, you cannot abstract existence from a chair because once you do that, what is left behind? Nothing. Right? Do you see what I'm talking about here, guys? That's why it is a distinctive point of view because it's not possible to look at existence as just one element in that which exists. Because if it were one element in that which exists, then I should be able to isolate it from the rest. But is it possible to isolate existence without destroying your data? If we were in the class, I'd be able to see your faces and you would, I'm sure I would know I would have read your minds which are asking, what is he talking about? But do you get it, guys? Yes? Okay, good. In other words, just imagine this, ha? Kung ihihiwalay mo ang meron, ang pagmemeron ng isang nagmemeron, ano pang maiiwan? Wala. Yes, Melchizedek.
Sir, just to clarify, cannot be abstracted unlike other traits because, well, in the first place, being is unlike any other trait because all other traits are contingent, or rather are dependent on being itself. So if we remove being from that which is, nothing will be left. So that's why.
Yes. But you do not do that by abstraction. Because by abstraction is precisely to pick out one element from the rest, which is not possible with being. However, we are capable of having this, what we call this distinctive point of view, so that when we're talking about being, okay, we can still understand without separating it from that which exists. Yes, Nicole.
Sir, to also clarify,
Okay.
so because metaphysics, being cannot be abstracted, that is the reason why there is no distinctive subject, just a distinctive point of
That
view.
is, yes, that is the objection raised. Okay. If I want to study, let's say, physical objects, I can focus on that which is physical, never mind the rest. But you will still have something left behind. I want to, let's say, study the hardness of wood. I can at least focus on that. And I can take the hardness of wood and leave the other characteristics of wood behind. And they would still be there. Right? But being, ang meron, is not just simply a trait. Because without it, no trait is even possible. That's how we are to study being. It has to come down to knowing as we will point out later, knowing as having, knowing as being relative. In other words, it has a distinctive point of view. Melchizedek, follow-up question?
Yes, sir. So if I were to rephrase it, sir, being itself cannot be a distinctive subject because every other subject, it's kind of like if there's a hierarchy, like subjects are below being. So
I don't think you can even talk about subject, about being as belonging to a hierarchy, because what would be hierarchized will have to exist. And so the lowest of the low, okay, would also have to exist in order to form a hierarchy. I guess you can think of Darwin or Teilhard de Chardin's evolution, theory of evolution, for example. You know, like you can start with the simplest thing. You complicate the simplest thing can become more complex, more complex, more complex, more complex. Okay, as if something is added on to that which is more basic. But this is by addition. The problem of explaining, for example, how we human beings are so different from anything else that exists is, how do you account for that big jump? Diba? From animals to human beings. How do you account for that capacity to know, for example? How do you account for that capacity to love? By addition? I suppose not. Same thing with being. You know, you don't have to account for being only when you become when you are on the level of the human being, because even an atom has to exist. all the way up. So it's not a hierarchy. That's Platonic. You have the highest good, I know. Okay? But for Plato, being is even beyond the good. You cannot even talk about it. Why not? Because the moment you say something, then it's already stuck. It has already been limited. It's no longer being. But forget about that. You get my point though. Christian, yes.
Sir, I'd like to ask, like, regarding the question of is metaphysics possible?
Mhm.
How would you address the objection, like, for Immanuel Kant, diba, like phenomena and noumena, like the problem of, well, you can't really know things in themselves. So how would you address that objection?
That objection has, well, what is Kant really trying to accomplish when he tries to talk about phenomenon and noumenon?
But he wanted to know, like, what we can know and can't know,
Okay,
right?
what we can know. Who cares about what we cannot know? We can only talk about what we can know, right? If it cannot be known, does it even exist? The proverbial, if a tree falls in the middle of a forest, does it make a sound? Have you heard that before?
Yes, sir. Barclay.
Okay. Does it make a sound?
He would say no, because there's no one to perceive it.
Okay, but who cares? Right? If it didn't make a sound, whether or not it made a sound does not matter precisely because there's no one who can affirm it or deny it. So, and this I think is a problem of Kant. I think what he's trying to do is to be able to tell us what we can know, to provide room for things that we cannot know sensibly. Because in the end, what Kant tries to do is to distinguish what can be sensible and what is not sensible, but it still exists. For example, reason, love, these are beyond the sensible. But just because they are beyond the sensible doesn't mean they don't exist, right? That's why from his pure reason, he moves on to practical reason. And then from practical reason, he moves on to faith. But you don't want me to go on a rampage through Kant. We don't have time. But do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you cannot know something, what is it? It doesn't even make sense to ask the question, what is it? Are you following me?
I'm trying to.
You go to a very, very old house. Like there are so many such houses in Vigan, for example. When I was a kid, we'd be afraid to pass by a particular street because of an old house that is not inhabited. And they say you hear a lot of things, noise there at night, and there's nobody there. And so you have, how do you explain such a phenomenon? What do you have? Guys, wala na kayong ganong karanasan? Hindi na kayo nagtatakutan? There must be ghosts, right? That's how we explain what we cannot understand or perceive. So kami lahat, tatakbuhin namin yung pagitan na yon kasi baka makakita kami ng multo. But come to think of it, what we cannot explain, what we cannot sense, we have to make up a name for it, just so we can say it exists. Because if there's no name, if we cannot talk about it, it might as well not exist. That's why Clark is very much against Kant, even for yours. Okay, when Kant says there's such a thing as a noumenon, that which is unknowable, not known, exists in itself and cannot be known. Okay, their question is, why bother about something you cannot know? It's okay. I don't. If you understand what I'm saying, fine. If you don't agree with what I'm saying, talk to me. Okay. Sige. Any more questions before I let you go? Okay, so who's first? Melchizedek or Pete? Okay, now Gio. Okay, let's hear from Gio first. Yes, Gio, are you going to
Yeah,
tell?
I can. No, I want to ask. A while ago, you talked to Christian Lee about this unknown. Like going back to this intelligibility, if we say that that's something called noumena is unknown, it seems like saying it is intelligible. It is also like in our context here, the metaphysics which is not the being at all.
Mhm.
Is it equivalent to say that? Like we go back also the other reading action. No action means no being.
Okay, but so if it's not intelligible, then it is. Are you saying that?
I mean, I want to say if it's not intelligible, that is not at all. I mean, like nothing at all. Here.
Yes. You're right. We should be able to distinguish between two statements. One statement is it is not it is intelligible, yes. Number two, that is not the same as saying I know, therefore everything. Okay? We learned that from Socrates. We don't know, we can never know everything. But in principle, anything that exists must be intelligible. In principle. That's how we are going to bring in God later on, guys. We may not know everything, but if there's not someone who knows even what we don't know, then it's hard to call that being. Anyway, I don't want to talk about the absolute at this point. All right? Pete, Melchizedek. Okay. So guys, may I have
Sir, si Pete na lang daw po maunang magtatanong.
huh?
Pete na lang daw po maunang magtatanong.
Pete? Wala na. Wala na muna.
Sige,
Kasi
sige na po.
tapos tong klase.
Okay po, sige po.
Okay. Basta you keep your question and we will start the next class with your questions. Next week, guys, because we are missing another day on Friday, I'd like to meet you on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. Okay? Just to make up for what we missed last week and this week. Okay, good. I'll Gio, make sure to remind me that we have a class on Monday.
Yes. So Father, I need to like email you.
No. Just knock on my door.
I call you, Father. I can't.
No. Just email me. Okay. I'm happy to have you as class because you keep on raising questions that are very, very good questions. Thank you very much. So please read. Please read. Okay, so we end here and I will see you Monday next week.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you,
Thank you po,
Father.
Father.
I have a question po pala regarding the
Ha?
the the first assessment.
Okay, wala pa. Hindi ko pa binibigay. Ano yung tanong mo, Melchizedek?
Diba?
Ha?
It's due next week po if I recall correctly as you mentioned.
Wednesday, yes. At least a week after I have posted it. And I'm going to make sure I post it tonight.
Thank you, Father.
So
Okay.
next week, Wednesday na yung deadline nun, right? Just
Ha?
to be sure. So next week, Tuesday na po yung deadline nun, just to be...
Hindi, Wednesday. Kasi Wednesday ngayon eh.
Okay. So next week, Wednesday or next week, Wednesday?
Wow.
I'm not sure, sir. I'm kind of confused. Just wanted to...
Wednesday, next week.
Okay. I just wanted the explicit next week, Wednesday.
Okay. Hindi naman, wag naman next week. Kung next week, dalawang assessments na yon.
Okay po.
Okay? Sige. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Angelo, can you stay behind?
Sure, Father.
Okay. Yes. Angelo, baka kon ha?
Father, we're still recording.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Am I still sharing? No more.
No more po.